Hello and welcome to Rash Act. In today's video, we will be reading scary Reddit posts. Turn off the lights, get snuggled up, and relax. Number 1. This story comes from the Reddit user Square Rig Jack. I was the navigation officer for a research ship in the South Pacific. We had recently come to Papua New Guinea for some work along the coast. We had arrived in a small bay at around 10 p.m. in the dark and dropped the anchor. I went over to mark our position on the chart and noticed an annotation that said, "Native village reported in the area." There were no fires or lights on the coast, so I didn't think anything much more of it. I turned on all the deck and underwater lights and went back into the bridge to stand my night watch as everyone else went to bed. With all the lights on, I couldn't see further than about 25 yards because of a light mist in the pitch black night. I sat in the bridge with the door open because I liked the sound of the night and the feeling of the air in the tropics. I kept hearing light splashing in the water and went out to sea because often we get hundreds of fish in our underwater lights. There was nothing there. I went back inside, but kept hearing faint splashing and couldn't figure out where it was coming from. Since I couldn't see into the distance, I went into the chart room and flicked on our infrared camera system, and there they all were. About 50 native outrigger canoes just sitting outside our pool of light. About 3 people to a canoe, and all just sitting and watching us, occasionally paddling one way or the other to keep their station. I've never felt so suddenly and violently alone and small as I did on that ship in the dark. I got a deck hand up and we both just walked around the decks to show that people were awake and moving. They sat there and watched us all night, completely invisible, except for on the infrared cameras. In the morning they came in and traded with us and were very friendly and just hadn't had a ship in their bay for decades. Number 2. This comes from the Reddit user OidBy37. I was driving down an old highway, not heavy usage anymore, during a snowstorm in 2011. Had a pretty close call on this particular trip. I was heading to the next town over with my girlfriend at the time, and we behind an SUV on the road. We were behind them for a good while when they came to a stop. I maneuvered the car around to get a good look at why they stopped. There was a truck in the road, driver and passenger doors open, and 2 sets of tracks in the snow leading off to the woods. I got out of the car to make sure no one was injured or needed help, but there were no signs of car trouble. There wasn't much snow built up on the inside of the car, so the doors hadn't been left open for long. It was snowing pretty heavy. I started to follow the set of tracks into the woods to check, but stopped. Before I could do much of anything else, the driver of the SUV called me over and let me know that the truck had been reported as stolen. They said the highway patrol was on their way, so I went about my business. A day or so later, I found out the owner of the truck was a man who lived nearby that had been missing for over a week. The police went into the woods to look for him and found his freshly deceased body in a ditch with a single gun shot to the back of the head. Whoever took him beforehand must have marched him out there, executed him, and just wandered off into the woods. I'm still very glad I didn't follow those tracks. I didn't hear the shots, so it must have been right before we all arrived at the truck. I don't even want to think what would have happened to me if I'd persisted.
Number 3. This comes from the Reddit user PyFJE.
Once I was working in a restaurant and got done around 12ish. I always rode my bike to and from work. It was about 15 minutes along a bike trail next to the train tracks. This trail was constantly straight, but had quite few exits here and there. It also only had a few small parts of it lit up by street lights, so without my front bicycle light, I would be totally blind for the most part. So this night, I leave on my way home after the shift and notice a guy biking behind me, which isn't too weird at that time of night in a busy but very safe city. It was weird that he had no lights and was still there after the first main exit, which after that led to a small town, but I thought it might just be a coincidence. I felt a bit creeped out and thought I might just be tired and the dark of the night is getting to me. So I decided to bike a bit slower and let this person pass. There was definitely enough room on this trail. The person started drifting along at the same speed as me and made no attempt to pass or even come closer. This is about when I'm a few minutes away from my house and decided to take some random lefts and rights instead of going straight home just in case this person was following me and wouldn't find out where I live. I bike around going in random twists and turns in a suburban neighborhood and he's still behind me. What I then did, as I noticed I was heading straight for a long dark path only for bicycles, I decided to turn into one of the houses and hide in the dark shadows from their garage. I heard this person pass the house and brake quickly in that small path. At this moment, my blood was boiling. Now I hop on my bike, and when I passed the edge of that street, I stopped and stared that person in the eyes. Well, that's what I hope he thought, 'cause I actually couldn't see anything of his face. I biked so fast, then did another few extra loops in here and there until I felt safe and alone again to go home. Never had anything like it afterwards, and still don't know who or why it could have been. I'm happy not knowing. Edit. I'm an average-sized girl and in my early 20s when this happened.
Stare at the dark too long and you'll eventually see what isn't there.